the spiritual life, the spiritual realm, devotion to Krishna. The Lord is manifesting His Dham in this world. According to our consciousness, of course, He will reveal that Dham to us. It's not just a geographically located place. Vrindavan is not of the material world. But if our consciousness is material, then something wrong with the sound. If our consciousness is material, then we'll see material. Krishna reciprocates the same thing with his Dham. And we may see it as a dusty place, maybe dirty place, decayed in some ways, neglected in some ways, overrun with materialistic activities, even now it's factories coming up, different things we may see, crowded, and so on. We may see like that. Because our heart is not so pure. You see, the material, even if we are able to enter onto a so-called other planet, we will not be able to see the actual what's actually there, because we don't have the appropriate senses, consciousness to experience anything but that which is related to our senses. We can hear about it, but to directly perceive it is not within our grasp. Our senses are imperfect. So our tendency is to judge everything according to our direct perception. But we can hear about the actual nature of the Holy Dham from one who has purified senses. Accept or not accept, we can hear about it. Just like for a sick person, because they may have been healthy at one point in time. Otherwise they cannot really conceive of what it actually feels like to be healthy. A person who is blind cannot experience what it's like to have sight. Maybe they had sight earlier, but when they've been blind from birth. You can only hear from others. Spiritually, we're blind in this world. We have virtually no spiritual awareness. Covered over, deeply covered by material attachments. Various forms of karma in various ways that we're covered by karma, identifying with this body, and identifying with our family, identifying with our place of birth, identifying with possessions, and so on, and trying to accumulate more, and making friends and enemies, and experiencing duality, and anxiety, and fear, and so on in this world. So we're covered over by these various elements and the effective result of contacting the elements in the form of various emotional, subtle coverings. Sometimes we're covered by anger, sometimes by greed, lust, envy, and so many other emotional moods that we experience. Various subtle coverings of the soul, which we're identifying with or being controlled by. So the result of associating with somebody who is not controlled, not under the influence. What you say is sometimes when somebody is drunk too much, they're under the influence, and they cannot see clearly or behave properly. We're under the influence of the material nature, which we think is normal, because we've forgotten our normal condition. It is not the normal condition of the soul you have to experience death, old age, anxiety, disease, and so on, even birth. Not the normal condition. It's abnormal. These are just different actions and reactions of the material energy. And have actually nothing ultimately to do with soul, but because we're witnessing them and identifying them, just like a person watching a movie identifies with the movie and becomes emotionally affected by what we watch. Although there's no direct reason. Because of identification, it's not like we're getting shot. It's just a picture of somebody being shot. But we identify with it, therefore we suffer from it. Or we become elated. So, association, we develop these various concepts and various, say, philosophies, you could say, our own philosophies of life by association. And when we get the spiritual association, it helps us to wake up a little bit to our spiritual identity. So going to Vrindavan, hearing about great personalities, just like today is known as Bhishma, the day when Bhishma departed the world, a great Mahajan, one of the 12 listed Mahajans in the Puranas. Those who are expert exponents of the path of true religiosity. They know the truth, they know the method to achieve it. And they explain it to others. So we hear a bit about that. Krishna will later. But for now, today is also being celebrated to some degree here in this temple today, Vasant Panchami. Vasant Panchami, the spring festival. In Australia, it's not the spring. We're still in the summer, and we only kind of identify 4 seasons. In India, they identify 6 seasons. So the winter season is finishing, the spring season is now beginning. Pretty early, but that's how it works. So today is the first day. I know it's not actually, it was last Thursday. But today we're remembering it at least. And that's why the deities are dressed so beautifully. If you look carefully, what are they dressed with? Flowers. All flowers. What color? Look carefully. Pardon? Green and yellow. Not many of you are wearing green and yellow today. In India, at least those who observe this in Vrindavan and other places, the ladies will dress in yellow, green and yellow. And there'll be leaves everywhere, nice green and yellow leaves. The mustard flowers are coming out bright yellow in the fields. And the deities are adorned with green and yellow colored outfits with flowers of yellow and green leaves everywhere. Springtime, time of celebration. Krishna says it's seasons in the flower-bearing spring. Flower-bearing spring is a very uplifting time. Of course, if we're not at the other end of the world here, it's back to front. And this next season will be autumn. This is Vrindavan we're talking about. Vasant Panchami, and very jolly and devotees, people in general perform all kinds of auspicious activities and pujas and so on and so forth, worship the Lord and the various servants of the Lord. And they start new things. We saw spring clean. In the West we call it spring cleaning. When spring comes, we clean up. So it's a good time to clean our hearts, purify our hearts. So we come to enter into Vrindavan. There's a beautiful song of one Narottam Das, by Roshan Das. Narottam Das Vishaya Chariya Kabe Shuddha Habe Ma If we want to enter Vrindavan, the heart has to be clean, pure. It has to be pure. Free of all material desire. Seems like very far away sometimes. But there's a process of this imperceptible cleansing of the heart, freeing us from the identification of this material world, narto pashamam shaksha, tiyo reflection. The material miseries which we experience of various kinds are superfluous to the soul. They're, directly speaking, nothing to do with the soul. It's a fallacy to identify with these material miseries. But unless we have another identity, we have pretty much no choice. And these miseries can be counteracted simply by the linking process of devotional service. Because devotional service to the Lord cleanses the heart, particularly the chanting of the holy name. Keto darpanamarjana Bhavamaha devagni evarpani Shriya Kurivacham Vikavataram Vidyavadoti. The Sanctamum is the prime benediction of the humanity of life, because it cleanses the heart of all the dust, all the material, karmic reactions of many, many lifetimes. Purifies that. So also seeing the glorification of the Lord Dham, Dham, purifies ourselves, helps us to enter into the Holy Dham. This material world can be, doesn't have to be, but it could be seen as, as a Dham hall. So by hearing about the Holy Dham, we get attracted. Right now we're attracted to the material world. Our family, our country, our habits, our hobbies, our sports, our music, our dress, our food, our house, everything. Attracted, our pet animals, if we have any. We're attracted. So we have to become attracted. Krishna says, Vishaya Vatante Bhavasati Asavajam Sopyasya Param Drishta Vatite. We need to experience the Param Drishta, the higher taste. Otherwise we can't give up the lower taste. It's not a matter of just no, it's a matter of yes. Taking on devotional service, absorbing ourselves, developing an attraction to devotional service. Let us sing together. Jai Radha Madhava.
Hare Ram,
Nama Sankirtanam ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Gopinath ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki jai. Gaurnitai ki jai. Shri Vasant Panchami ki jai. Bhishmashtami ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Glorious to the assembled. Hare Krishna. Glorious to Shri Guru. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Gaura Anand Nirvishesha Srinivadi Kastachari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So welcome everyone today to Radha Gopinath Mandir here in North Sydney. And very nice to see many devotees after almost a year here today. We wish we could spend more time. We all know how the workings of providence, the workings of time move us around in this world, here and there, through different species, through different bodies, through different situations. And today, being Bhishmashtami, I thought we've already spoken a little bit about Vasant Panchami, and I don't know what more to say. So we'll speak a little bit about Bhishmashtami, which is, not to say, it's not something that everybody is aware of, or maybe even recognizes, we may not hear about it. But it is the day when the great soul, Bhishma Dev, decided to leave the world, and it's a very, I could say, he's teaching us the method of leaving the world. It was a pretty important lesson, as we were mentioning the other day. We hear a lot about lessons of life, lessons how to live. It is pretty important to learn the lesson of how to die. That doesn't mean, dying in your home, or dying with, what they say, peacefully in the night. We don't know if it is peaceful in the night. Others who weren't around, they may say that. Or dying in a hospital bed or something, with doctors and tubes and everything. That's not the meaning. It means the consciousness, as we were hearing this morning, how King Parikshit had asked this question. What should one be thinking of at the time of death? What is our duty at the time of death? Is it possible to, is it possible not to have so much echo? Just make straight sound, if you keep echoing. Hare Krishna. Can you hear at the back? No. Turn the volume up, but without the echo. I don't want to have to shout too loud. Hare Krishna, can you hear at the back? Well, if you can't hear, you won't answer, so I don't know where that came from. I'll put my glasses on to see. Can you hear at the back? You can hear? Okay. You can't hear and I can't see, so you have an interesting combination. Okay, so the lesson of dying sounds a bit morbid. Why is he talking about this? Let's enjoy ourselves while we can. Okay, maybe it'll never happen anyway. Hopefully. Even common term, isn't it? As sure as death. As certain as death. But we can't avoid it. unavoidable factor. Many other things may not be so predictable, but it is predictable. The time may not be predictable, but the event is. So we'll all experience this at some point. If anybody wants to get through, can we make a little gap here, please, from, I don't know, come to the front, I think. And you make space. So, Bhishma Dev is giving us a wonderful job. So I'm going to get in there because time is short. I do at 7. And many of you are more familiar than me with his history of how this whole event unfolded. What was Krishna's plan? We can see how many of the stories and many of the events that we hear about in the Puranas particularly sound very strange sometimes, but if we understand it in the bigger picture and the full context, we can understand that this is Krishna's hand working through various personalities to illustrate or to introduce a particular lesson or pastime or something. In the case of Bhishma, we can see how everything is a will of providence. He was, of course, residing in his previous lifetime as one of the Vasus in the heavenly planets. And they went, there were 8 Vasus. One day they went to the ashram of Vishishta Muni. Now Vishishta Muni is one of the great sages of the universe. And he has a cow, a Kamadena cow, Nandini. There's a Kamadena, wish-fulfilling cow, you know. You can get any amount of milk, no end, whatever you can get. She provides wish fulfilling. So the wife of one of the Vasus, I can't remember his name, something like that. His wife became very attracted to this cow and wanted her husband please to take the cow, bring it home, bring the cow home. You know, sometimes if you ever go shopping with your wife, you look in a window and you want that, bring it home, I want it. And if you don't get it, they never let you forget about it. So she was determined and she convinced her husband. So her husband talked to his brothers, and together, he particularly, decided they would steal the cow of Vashishta. So they tried to steal the cow. It's not as easy to steal that cow as you think. Not as easy. But anyway, they tried to steal the cow and did it initially. And consequently, they were cursed by Vashishta, that you will take birth as human beings. A curse, can you imagine? That's a curse. They were very disturbed. So then he released them from the curse a little bit. They apologized and fell at his feet loud. And so for 7 of them, the 7 who just kind of corroborated, he said, okay, you will return, you will be freed of this human birth very shortly after being born. Very shortly. So 7 of them. But the one who was the main one said, you will have to live a long life. So he was very sad and again, repentant. He said, even though you will live a long life, he said you will have no progeny, you will not marry, all these things. But he said you will be the most pious, greatest personality, famous at the time. So he gave him personal blessings and so in due course of time, of course, the curses of pure souls. They curse in order to bless. Their curses are not self-centered, they're actually for the benefit of the recipient. So Vasus took birth, and as you may know, the King Shantanu at the time, the king of the, basically of the emperor basically of the world. He was the head king in the dynasty, Kuru dynasty. And one day he saw the river Ganges, he saw Ganga personified, and he became so attracted, infatuated, he begged her to become his wife. She'd also become, she was cursed, I think, by Lord Brahma, also to, have a human husband and so on. So he begged her, please become my wife. So she agreed, but she agreed on one condition. You never question anything I do. Whatever I do, you accept it. Never question, otherwise I'll leave you immediately. So it's a pretty tough one. So anyway, after a year or so, she became pregnant, gave birth to a little boy. And after a short while, she threw the boy, or drowned the boy in the Ganga. Don't question it. He tolerated. Number 2, same thing. Number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. All drowned in the Ganga. Now from our perspective, this is a heinous and horrible thing. But it's providential that all those boys, little children, just spent a few days in a human body and then went back to the heavens as vassals, which is what they wanted. Because people don't believe in the soul, they don't believe in karma, they don't believe in God, they don't believe in any of these things. Therefore, we judge everything from our own perspective and make our own conclusions and laws, etc., with no knowledge of the actual situation, unfortunately. And thus we've done away with capital punishment and so many other things, not knowing the ways of the laws of nature. So the 8th son was then born. By this time Shantanu could tolerate no more. And when he saw Ganga, his wife, pick that baby up to take him, drown him in the Ganga, he couldn't take it. Stop! Stop! Why are you doing this? Oh. I told you not to question what I was doing. I'm off. But she didn't drown the child. She took the child. She said, I'm going to take this child with me. You're not even going to have the child. I will return this. This child will come back to you in due course of time. But now, I'm taking this child with me. She took that child to the heavens. Her curse was up, and she went back to the heavens. And there she nurtured that child, and had that child educated by all the great sages of the universe, in all these sciences and arts that can be learned in this world and in the next. Spiritual science, material science, military science, logic, reason, medical, everything. She trained in different acharyas, Vishishta, so many others, Brihaspati, Parashuram, so many, Jayavana, so many guided him in various arts and various lives of knowledge. The boy was fully equipped. And when the time was right, when he was ready, she returned him. He appeared back on this planet and became heir apparent to the throne. Of course, much of this was unknown to Shantanu, what was the future. He thought, what fortune, what a son I have. Most qualified. He will get married and continue the dynasty. He was very happy. But Shantanu, being a Kshatriya, and like many Kshatriyas do, they have natural inclination to have several wives for various reasons. And of course Ganga was not there, so he fell in love with a fisherwoman. She was more than a fisherwoman, but she was again in that position, Satyavati, as a fisherwoman. And he was madly in love with her. He saw her again at the river one day. And so he approached the girl's father. She said, you have to ask my father. So he went to her father, and her father said, no. No, I cannot do it. Why? Why not? He said, because, you know, my daughter may marry you, but you already have a son from another woman, and he's senior. He will become the king. After you pass away, he will become the king. The sons of my daughter will not become the king. Therefore you cannot have my daughter in marriage. He refused. Shantanu was very unhappy, very miserable. And when, of course, at that time it wasn't known as Bhishma, it was known as Devavrata. Devavrata then, finding out his father's distress, he went to the father of Satyavati and said, no, I will not inherit the kingdom, I promise. If you give your daughter to my father, because he was so, that was the other thing, it said he would be completely faithful to his father, totally. So he said, whatever, I will not take the kingdom, so you have nothing to fear. Then the father of Satyavati said, okay, I believe you, but what about your sons? They will become the king. He said, okay. To assure this father of Satyavati, he said, all right then, I promise I will never marry, I will never have offspring. And this way, the father was convinced and he gave his daughter to Shantanu. Of course, she became the mother of the Chittaviras from that one. But this vow which he took, which is a tremendous vow for Kshatriya, to not marry and not have progeny. They don't, it's just not heard of. And that's the cry from the heavens, Bhishma, flowers came down from the heavens, Bhishma. He made this great vow, lifetime vow, to remain celibate for his whole life. Very powerful vow. So then, life goes on. Of course, later on he became the advisor to the kings, the sons of Satyavati and Shantanu. He advised them at different stages, but he was always faithful to the kings. That was his promise. Whoever was governing on behalf of his father, he saw his father in them. That's why he stuck to Dhritarashtra, because he made this promise. Even though he knew he was misbehaving in many ways. So he did for his life, and as you know, life came on, and the battle of Kurukshetra eventuated. And Bhishma, because of his chastity, you could say, as a Kshatriya towards his king, he fought on behalf of Dhritarashtra, or Duryodhana, against the Pandavas. And in various ways, there's a long story of how he has secured the wives for Chittavirya, and so on and so forth, and the cursing of Amba, that he would, basically she would become the cause of his death, because she was left abandoned, all that to say. So she took birth again as Sikandi, who was the cause of Bhishma's death in that sense. Of course, Bhishma had also been given a blessing, along with his curse, that he could choose when he died. He could die whenever he wanted. He didn't have to die by the normal laws of nature. So at the Battle of Kurukshetra, these things a little bit maybe, but how Arjuna finally pinned him to the ground with arrows after tremendous battles of days on end. And he was the great general in the battle, heralded by all. Arjuna saluted him, everyone saluted him. And then he was pinned, so that was the end of his participation in the Kurukshetra battle, but it wasn't the end of Bhishma. For many weeks he lay there on the bed of arrows as the battle raged, continued to the end. And then still, much longer, he lay there. And at that time, of course, the ruling of the world had now fallen into the hands of the Pandavas, headed by Yudhishthira, so Yudhishthira was feeling terrible. Yudhishthira had a very soft heart, even though he was the head of the Pandavas. His heart was he was always thinking, it's my fault. Even if it's not your fault, a soft-hearted person thinks like that. So he thought the whole battle was his fault. He's the cause of millions and millions of people dying, and on, and so many wives and family members being devastated. So he was very disturbed, very disturbed. So he heard that Bhishma was still lying there on the battlefield in the bed of arrows. So he went there to see his grandfather. And when he got there, he was like his grandfather. He got there, and Krishna also came along. The other Pandavas came along. Everybody wanted to see Bhishma this time. They all went there, and even demigods came. All the great sages came. They knew something special was about to happen. And we'll read a little bit about what happened. Put the clock back a little bit. What can we do? The sons of Maharaj Pandavas were sitting nearby, overtaken with affection for their dying grandfather. Seeing this, Bhishma congratulated them with feeling. Can you imagine? He's lying there, pinned to the ground with arrows, on his deathbed, literally, and he's speaking out. There were tears of ecstasy in his eyes, for he was overwhelmed by love and affection. Bhishma said, "Oh, what terrible sufferings and what terrible injustices you good souls suffer for being the sons of religion personified." He's speaking like this, you know. Most people on their deathbed, I'm suffering so much. Oh, help me. He's not simply thinking, you have suffered so much. You did not deserve to remain alive under those tribulations, yet you were protected by the Brahmins, God, and religion. As far as my daughter-in-law Kunti is concerned, upon the great General Pandu's death, she became a widow with many children, and therefore she suffered greatly. And when you were grown up, she suffered a great deal also because of your actions. To read the Mahabharata, in my opinion, this is all due to inevitable time, under whose control everyone in every planet is carried, just as the clouds are carried by the wind. Oh, how wonderful is the influence of inevitable time. It is irreversible. Otherwise, how can there be reverses in the presence of King Yudhisthira, the son of a demigod controlling religion? Bhima, the great fighter with a club, the great bowman Arjuna with his mighty weapon Jandiva, and above all, the Lord, the direct well-wisher of the Pandavas. O King, no one can know the plan of the Lord, Sri Krishna. Even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they are bewildered. O best among the descendants of Bharata, Yudhisthira, I maintain therefore that all this is within the plan of the Lord. Accepting the inconceivable plan of the Lord, you must follow it. You are now the appointed administrative head, and my Lord, he addressed Yudhisthira, my Lord, you should now take care of those subjects who are now rendered helpless. This Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable, original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayan, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vishnu, just like one of us. And he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. O King, Lord Shiva, Narada, the sage amongst the demigods, and Kapila, the incarnation of Godhead, all know very confidentially about his glories through direct contact. O King, that personality whom out of ignorance only you thought to be your maternal cousin, your very dear friend, well-wisher, counselor, messenger, benefactor, etc., is that very personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Being the absolute personality of Godhead, he is present in everyone's heart. He is equally kind to everyone, and he is free from the false ego of differentiation, equal to everyone. Therefore, whatever he does is free from material inebriety. He is equibalanced. Yet despite his being equally kind to everyone, he has graciously come before me while I am ending my life, for I am his unflinching servitor. The personality of Godhead who appears in the mind of the devotee by attentive devotion and meditation and by chanting of the holy name, releases the devotee from the bondage of fruitive activities at the time of his quitting his material body. He's preaching now to everyone how to leave this body. He had Krishna in front of him. We may not have physically, or let's say literally, not physically, but literally the Lord standing in front of us. We can follow this path. There are ways of doing it. May my Lord, who is four-handed and whose beautifully decorated lotus face with eyes as red as the rising sun is smiling, kindly await me at that moment when I quit this material body. He wants to quit his body with Krishna in front of him, with the memory of Krishna, with the holy name chanting, pictures of Krishna. This is the way to leave our body. Just like our Jai Vijay Prabhu recently in Brisbane, the temple president of Brisbane left his body last week, a week or two ago. He was seemingly on his own, but he wasn't on his own. He left him seemingly in the night. He'd arranged before he left his body. Nobody else knew. But sometime in the night, before he left his body, he put Lord Nrsimhadev right up behind his head. He put Nrsimha around his neck. He had a book about Vrindavan Krishna right next to his hand. Pictures of Krishna. He made these arrangements himself. Nobody else did it. And then he left his body. Krishna arranged. This is the good fortune for one who is a devotee of Krishna, that Krishna appears in one form or another at the time of death. Sutta Goswami said, Maharaj Yudhisthira, after hearing Bhishma Dev speak in that appealing tone, asked him, in the presence of all the great rishis, about the essential principles of various religious duties. At Maharaj Yudhisthira's inquiry, Bhishma Dev first defined. Now he's lying on the deathbed, moments before leaving his body, and he's preaching to Bhishma and everyone present. To Yudhisthira and everyone present, Bhishma Dev first defined all the classifications of castes and orders of life in terms of the individual's qualifications on an ashram. Then he systematically, in twofold divisions, described counteraction by detachment and interaction by attachment, all the various do's and don'ts within this material world. And I guess we got time. And I'll just read a little bit from the Prabhupada. We don't have much time, but here's a little thing. Because this is just a tiny summary. I have to read Bhishma Parva in the Mahabharata to get more. But this is a little summary. And here's a few little things that he mentioned. He said, all human beings should follow this. 9 qualifications of a human being. Not to become angry, not to lie, to equally distribute wealth, to forgive, to beget children only by one's legitimate wife, to be pure in mind and hygienic in body, not to be inimical toward anyone, to be simple, and to support servants or subordinates. One cannot be called a civilized person without acquiring the above-mentioned preliminary qualities. One has to become civilized. And amongst the civilized people, Prabhupada said, the Varnashram system to be introduced. Unless we're civilized, there's no question. That's civilized people who introduce this system. What's going on? What are you doing? You're hungry? Oh no. We'll go on to the next verse because time doesn't allow. He then explained by divisions, acts of charity, the pragmatic activities of a king, and activities for salvation. Then he described the duties of women and devotees, both briefly and extensively. Probably gives a nice little comment here. He says, as far as salvation is concerned, one has to conquer the principles of lust, anger, unlawful desire, avarice, and bewilderment. To get freedom from anger, one should learn how to forgive. To be free from unlawful desires, one should not make plans. By spiritual culture, one is able to conquer sleep. By tolerance only can one conquer desires and avarice. Disturbances from various diseases can be avoided by regulated diets. By self-control, one can be free from false hopes, and money can be saved by avoiding undesirable association. By practice of yoga, one can control hunger, and worldliness can be avoided by culture and the knowledge of impermanence. Dizziness can be conquered by rising up, and false arguments can be conquered by factual ascertainment. Talkativeness can be avoided by gravity and silence, and by prowess one can avoid fearfulness. Perfect knowledge can be obtained by self-cultivation. One must be free from lust, avarice, anger, dreaming, etc. to actually attain the path of salvation. And he goes on to describe the duties of women and other things. We don't have time to get into depth. If we have, we'll go back. Then he described the occupational duties of different orders and statuses of life, citing instances from history, for he was himself well acquainted with the truth. This didn't happen in a few months. He spoke for a long, long time, and everyone listened, including Krishna. While Bhishma Dev was describing occupational duties, the sun's course ran into the northern hemisphere. This period is desired by mystics who die at their will. Thereupon, the man who spoke on different subjects with thousands of meanings and who fought on thousands of battlefields and protected, thousands of men stopped speaking, and being completely freed from all bondage, withdrew his mind from everything else and fixed his wide open eyes upon the original personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who stood before him, four-handed, dressed in yellow garments, appropriate for Sampacha, dressed in yellow garments that glittered and shined. By pure meditation, looking at Lord Sri Krishna, he at once was freed from all material inauspiciousness and was relieved of all bodily pains caused by the arrow wounds. Keep the door closed if we can, please. A lot of enthusiastic sound vibrations coming through the door. It's going to be difficult in and out going on. The doors are coming in and out all the time. Thus, all the external activities of his senses at once stopped, and he prayed transcendently to the controller of all living beings while quitting his material body. Bhishma Dev said, "Let me now invest my thinking, feeling and willing, which was so long engaged in different subjects and occupational duties, in the all-powerful Lord Sri Krishna. He is always self-satisfied, but sometimes being the leader of the devotees, he enjoys transcendental pleasure by descending on the material world, although from him only the material world is created. Sri Krishna is the intimate friend of Arjuna. He has appeared on this earth in his transcendental body, which resembles the bluish color of the tamal tree. His body attracts everyone in the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. May his glittering yellow dress and his lotus face, covered with paintings of sandalwood pulp, be the object of my attraction, and may I not desire fruitive results." On the battlefield where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, the flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses, and because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. All these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna, because Bhishma is a pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord felt those arrows just like the loving bites of a lover, or like flowers. Just like when a lover bites her beloved sometimes. It's not considered. Someone else bites you, you may react in an aggressive way. When the lover bites it, it's a sign of love. And Krishna was taking it like that. In obedience to the command of his friend, Lord Sri Krishna entered the arena of the battlefield of Kurukshetra between the soldiers of Arjuna and Duryodhana. And while there, he shortened the lifespan of the opposite party by his merciful glance. This was done simply by his looking at the enemy. Let my mind be fixed upon that Krishna. When Arjuna was seemingly polluted by ignorance upon observing the soldiers and commanders before him on the battlefield, the Lord eradicated his ignorance by delivering transcendental knowledge, Bhagavad Gita. May his lotus feet always remain the object of my attraction. And don't forget, it was Krishna who told Arjuna to kill Bhishma. He's talking about the He's seeing it in reality, not according to his relativity. Fulfilling my desire and sacrificing his own promise, he got down from his chariot, took up his wheel and ran towards me hurriedly, just as a lion goes to kill an elephant. He even dropped his outer garment on the way. May he, Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who awards salvation, be my ultimate destination. On the battlefield he charged me as if angry because of the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows. His shield was scattered and his body was smeared with blood due to the wounds. Krishna manifested his blood and wounds and everything just to reciprocate with Bhishma. The lowest body has no veins. But to manifest reciprocation, to show loving reciprocation, he appeared like this, to glorify his devotee. At the moment of death, let my ultimate attraction be to Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. I concentrate my mind upon the chariot driver of Arjuna, who stood with a whip in his right hand and a bridle rope in his left, who was very careful to give protection to Arjuna's chariot by all means. Those who saw him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra attained their original forms after death. Very fortunate. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajadam, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the Rasa dance. At the Rajasuya Yajna performed by Maharaj Yudhisthira, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal unlearned orders, and in that great assembly, Lord Sri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the instant in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that Lord. Sri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality. In regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators, he is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. Suta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the super soul, Lord Sri Krishna. That means totally absorbed in Krishna. And he became Krishna. He merged himself in thoughts of Krishna. With his mind, speech, sight, and actions, and thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. Knowing that Bhishma Dev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the supreme absolute truth, all present there became silent, like birds at the end of the day. Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest rule order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. Then they performed the funeral rites. So that's the departure of Bhishma Dev. 7 o'clock right on time. He's just departed, and we can learn all the lessons we need to know if we hear this section of the Bhagavatam and the purport to prepare us for the inevitable time which will come to all of us in a way that we will be fully satisfied by absorbing our consciousness in Krishna. Krishna says, whatever you remember at the time of death, that state you attain. Those who remember me at the time of death come to me. So Bhishma Dev was so fortunate. Srila Prabhupada also surrounded by devotees in Kirtan, many devotees, so times devotees in this position. Krishna comes to remind us, to those who render devotional service, Krishna never forgets. We should practice remembering Krishna now. Every moment is a preparation for this time. There's not danger at every step there is. Samasritiye padapala bhagavan bhaktadan punyashomahari. Danger at every step. We have to try to remember the Supreme Lord in our daily lives. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So now it's time for Arti. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Shri Bhishmashtami ki jai, Shri Santanchami ki jai. Go Premanandi. Hare Hare.